Good morning, everybody. This is Jim Nelson again with the second session on Thor tools. Before we go into the tools, we're going to revisit some of the stuff from yesterday, what I hope you have learned so far. First of all, about the installation use of the quick access menu. Now, something that I don't think that I mentioned about the quick access menu is that there will be no updates to it. It has been installed. Once you install it on your computer, it will never be touched again automatically, which means that you can modify it any way you want. Add tools, remove tools, change the caption, change the hotkeys, anything you want. It's entirely yours. And this is an addition. This doesn't replace anything that was already on your computer. It is just a new one that has been added automatically. Second thing is something that came up yesterday in the Q&A afterwards was that there were some hotkeys that all showed up as F12. And I thought I had a solution for the problem, and I do. I just haven't implemented it yet. Actually, it doesn't have to do with the quick access menu. It has to do with a Thor table, support table, which somehow got released in basically an incomplete state. So the second thing we talked about was using the Shift plus key to get to the hidden context menu. And there are the two most important things on that menu are, first of all, the help thing, which gets you to the help screen for every single tool. And I have gone through every tool to make sure that that help is sufficient. I don't know if I said this, but the fact that I could do that meant that I didn't have to write a huge white paper. I have a very short white paper which tells you how to use the quick access menu and the hidden context menu. The second item on the hidden context menu is reporting bugs and issues. And what I'd like to say about reporting bugs is I really want you to do so. I want to get rid of bugs in the code whenever possible. And second of all, I ask that when you do so, you don't act like, let me say, a dumb user. Please give as much information as you would like to receive. So include a snapshot of the error message, as well as different screens from the debugger. So the code screen, the call stack, local variables, any of those screens that have any content, please include those to help. Look, normally the person who is going to be responding to these questions is me, not exclusively me, but frequently me. Keep me in mind that you're trying to make things as easy as possible for me to help solve the problem. We started our list of the big gun tools yesterday. We're going to continue today with a few that might have made that list, except for timing issues, and a lot of small gun, pop gun tools. And the thing about the pop gun tools is there's a lot of tools left to go through for today. And if we're going to go through them, some of them are going to get really short shrift. So some of the time it may seem like I'm galloping, but that's the only way I can get through this. And last of all, recognize that Thor is part of Matt's legacy. So let's go back to where we left off yesterday. This buffer overrun error, which actually bombs us out of Foxborough. That's a miserable thing to have happen at any time. And first of all, I want to tell you that this is a very rare error. We know what causes the error. It's actually a Foxborough A members can cause this error. We know what to do to prevent the error, and there are tools to help with this. So this is not scary, but I'm going to use this as an example to show another tool that I want to show you. So the question is, if you got this error, what would be, once the cussing stopped, what would be the first thing that you would do? I'm going to give you 5 seconds to think of what you would do. I hope that your response would be, Jim, I'm going to do just what you did. I took a snapshot of the error so I can report it so you can see what's going on. That's what I'm hoping, that when you get errors, report them right away. There's certainly here, there's no debugger windows, but it would help greatly to have this information. So let's get past the screen. I'm not going to execute it again, but I'm going to go back to where we were when this happened. Now, if I press dot here, it will always give me an error because it's consistent. The error that occurs here is an error. You can actually duplicate it in the command line, having nothing to do with Thor. So how do you get around that? Well, you want a short-term solution. You can say dot, let's do this, x dot run. You could do that and get rid of the x. You could actually type in space dot run and get rid of the space. You could actually leave it that way. One of the curious things is that spaces around dots don't matter. So you could, this right here, oops, sorry. I'm not typing very well. That right there would work as well. Space, a white space around a dot does not matter. And of course, you could have turned off in IntelliSense X altogether temporarily. So you can get around the error in the short run by all of these things. That's not a good long-term solution. You just, to continue with your work, you can do that. So I'm going to close this and say, okay, let's get find a better solution to that. And I'm going to open up a new item in the Thor menu called the Tool Manager, which has not been properly introduced. So here we are, first time. Welcome to the world. It takes a little while to come up because it has, well, in my case, it's showing 461 tools. There are many duplications in there. There are reasons why tools can appear more than once in here. So don't be astounded by that number. As you can see, there are lots of fields that appear here. And as I showed you before, this is once again our super browse, courtesan of Tura, and I hope I'm coming close to getting your name correct. As I showed you yesterday, you can click on a record here, double click on it, and we'll bring up Matt's thing of dynamic forms, and you can look at all the fields. And we have the name of the tool and how you can access it through the hotkey, through the menu or a hotkey. Tells whether it's favorite and startup and all this other stuff. You should know that even though, note, you can't save this, you can't change these values here because the underlying, what we have is a cursor. That will not put anything you change into Thor tables. So this is a convenient way to look at a single record. You know what? There's one other thing I wanted to show you. You'll notice that these, I'm not sure how many of you people can see this. We have three little dots here. That means that this is a memo field. So like this one here, that's all it fits. But you can double click on the menu field. This is a better example, I think. So there will be a use for that. You will find times when you'll want to edit memo fields. Okay, so that just shows how this is laid out. Now, what you want to do is you want to be able to search, and there's a really neat search facility in this, and I don't mean to take this away from Tura's presentation of this same tool later this afternoon. But there is part of it that is appropriate here. If you search by value, you can type in a keyword or keywords here, and we'll find any row. This is not only for Tool Manager, but this is just the way that SuperBrowse works. You can type in a value, and it'll find any row where that value is contained in a character field. So for instance, if I typed in buffer overrun, just so happens that since this is a known problem, actually it has been known for like 10 or 12 years, there are two interesting tools that have to do with this. One is find threats, and the other is something to do about avoiding the buffer overrun error. And so the next thing that's available here, so far I've just been showing the way Super Browse works. The thing that is new in Super for the tool manager is you can see a familiar menu if you right click. So you can right click on this particular guy and I can go to the help for it, and it gives us this little screen that describes the error, and it says that the error happens if you have a long parameters list of more than 255 characters. I don't know that it's exactly 255, but it's in that neighborhood. So if you run this particular tool, it will find all candidates for error. And then when you have found the one that needs to be corrected, you can go this one and it will tell you, yeah, I didn't want to do that. Wrong place. Sorry, folks. I meant to do, I can use the help here to find out how this one works. So if you got this error, you could follow this thread through these tools to get to the place where you could resolve the problem. I've only had this once. My coworker had it actually a couple of weeks ago, and we had it fixed in really just a few minutes. Now, I had said as well that I recommended that you install the quick access menu because it would make sense to have it available for you during the session. And the reason that what I'm suggesting here is, let's go over here just a bit. This all up for everything that's in the quick access menu. It shows you the sequence of keys that will get you to that item. And in particular, if you filter here on Alt plus Q, it's going to list all of the items that are in the Alt Q quick access list. So this is the list right now. You're going to be able to follow, if you can do this on a separate screen, you can follow through directly here, exactly through the list of items that I'm going to cover for the remainder of the session. Pretty much they will appear in the order that I will describe them. Now, if we go back to here, one of the things you can say is something's a favorite. I didn't want to click on, suppose I wanted PIM editor to be a favorite. I can say, okay, mark that guy as a favorite. And the favorites here, it takes a second or two to refresh. And this now when Open PIM Editor is now a favorite, and it will appear in bold in the quick access menu. So my suggestion is keep this screen up, and as you find something that appeals to you that you want to come back to, mark it as a favorite right here. Scroll down as we go through and then when you're done, you'll have marked off which ones you want to revisit. So finally, we're going to go back to, and actually I have to talk about this because of this. We have another tool called IntelliSense X by Hotkey. This is what Matt Slay used. For me, by dot means it happens automatically by dot. However, if you want native IntelliSense and only want to bring up IntelliSense X, when you use a hotkey, you can use this key instead. There are 3 reasons for that. Originally, the first reason is if you type in something with a dot T dot F dot, if you type too fast, those dots might go in the wrong position. So you learn to type a little bit slower. The second thing was something that came up in the Q&A session yesterday, and that was about that on some forms, if you went into the debugger or PIM editor and you typed a dot, it went in the wrong place. That is no longer a problem. It's been fixed. And the third issue is the buffer overrun, which I just showed you, which has a remedy. So I certainly would suggest, as I have done, using IntelliSense X by dot when I start my session and just leaving it on. Now, these, moving past that, going on to all of this suite of 8 different drop-downs, the thing about IntelliSense X is there are 2 parts to it. One is finding out what the drop-down list looks like, and the other is the UI, which lets you navigate and select from the list. And those are two separate parts of IntelliSense X, and we use the drop-down part for all of these. It's the same drop-down. So if you learned how it used yesterday, then it will work the same here for instance, drop-down constants. Now, I have to say that one of the complications for this presentation is that these windows come up to be so big that you can't get them out of the way. And what I really want to do is, this one is drop-down constants F9, and I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to get rid of the menu, and I'm going to use F9, which will show up. No, actually, I think I really want to do, let's see if it's going to do it. Didn't want to do it. Let's try that one more time. There we go. So drop-down constants, this isn't the, well, that's okay. Drop-down constants, here we have a define statement and an include statement, and it shows all the constants that come either from the define statements or the include files, and it shows you, first of all, on the far right, what file it came from. It shows you the drop-down list, and it shows you as much of the value as it can, including the comments. So as you would expect, you can begin, for instance, saying, if I say category, these are the only guys that have category. Or if I said truncated, that's the only one for truncated. So you can search this list very easily through your list of constants, or you can type purple. Okay, fine. What would not be obvious is that you can also type that middle column, which has the values and sometimes comments, if there are any. So if I typed right now NIS status, I would find all of those these are matches in the middle. This is actually a field. It's a reference to a field, and these are the values for that field. And similarly, I could type in 515, and I can find so you can search based upon the value that you're looking for as well. Let's continue down our list here. Let's see here. The next one is drop-down table names. Well, this is the list of all the tables in your path, and this is one for which I have a plugin because I have a meta table for my list of table names, and instead of trying to find everything in the path, it actually just reads it from my meta table. The next one in line, well, I might as well show you what mine looks like. It doesn't really want to, let's see here. It's been misbehaving when I try to execute it from that large menu. So this is my list of tables, and once again, I can search the same way. It's the same UI for all of them. The next one in line is drop-down procedures. Let's see if this one's going to work. Does not want to work here. It works from my hotkey. It may work from you if you don't have such a large font. Drop-down procedures is a list of, well, it looks at all PRGs in your path and knows them. And then for those within those that are in your set procedure list, it looks for procedures as well. So this includes, well, if I was able to scroll here, you'd see it's a long, long list. And some of these, you'll see a bunch of these right here, all are in, this is in a procedure list. Some of them, and that procedure list is really long, and some of them are just in their own PRGs. So I typically say, you know, I got something to do with logical fields, and I can type logic and I find the logical fields. I find this tremendously useful. Actually, I use it a lot just in the code window to find from my long list of procedures ones that back my memory I know part of the name. Next one is drop-down command expressions, and that should say, let's see here, command, it says expressions, it should say expansions. And once again, it's not working, so that's okay. Shift F11 is the key. And this is everything that you can do at the beginning of a line. It's the familiar list. MC is a modified command, and that it works the same way. The thing about this that is different, the reason that you might be interested, besides being able to find long lost tool, things that you have defined that you don't use frequently enough to remember all the time. The second part of it is that you can create, for instance, I have one called MTI. And when I type MTI, it will expand at the beginning of a line into maintenance table items, which is just a long name of a table I have. And I can say select star from MTI. And now when I use the hotkey Shift F11, well, I would have to put a space in there, wouldn't I? I can go directly to that and we'll expand this. So if you add records to your Foxcode table, and that is one of the tools which I'm not sure if I'm going to get to at the end of the session, you can put abbreviations in that will work, but they will work in the middle of the line, not only at the beginning of the line. The next one here is drop down names used in the code window. Still doesn't like it. It says Control N. There's something about the drop-down list that doesn't want to work. It lists all the names, not in alphabetical order, but alphabetical order by group. So here are names that are assigned, but not local, public, or private. And then it tells you things that are clearly a table because it does a select from. And here's somewhat, it knows that that's a cursor for somehow. Some things that are referenced, but it's not clear what their definition is. And there are no globals or locals for this particular procedure. So they're not, but they would be listed as well. But you can search for them the same way. So if you said LC, you're just going to get I would get the local character values, variables. Drop down form names in the active project. Well, that's pretty obviously what that's doing. Same thing with drop down reports in the active project. That's pretty obvious what that's doing. Drop down aliases over here in font that I'm sure is way too small to be visible to those in the room is the list of aliases, and you can get the drop. You can do that as well. So if I do, once again, this drop down is going crazy. I do this to get to the list, particularly if I have long file names or cursor names, I can get to the list very quickly. So I think we're done now with the drop-down list. Now I skipped a couple of categories up here before. I skipped them because the drop-down list actually is closely related to go-to definition. The rest of these are not closely related. So we had gone sort of out of order. We're going back to that. So this one says super browse the current table. So suppose we had a current table, SWF tools, and I go to current super browse that table, and it shows me that table using super browse. A convenient way, you don't have to go to the command window. And if you've become an aficionado of super browse instead of browse, with all the features, nice features that it provides, all of which Thor will go through in detail in his session at the end of the day. So that's one way to do that. Something else you can do, if we say, well, if I had a table here, if I had a reference to something called item global, which is a table, the next one in line says, use and select highlighted table. So if I clicked here, if I saw that in code, I can go here and execute it, and you'll see you can imagine seeing over here in the data session that table has been opened for me, and it is now current. Now we're going to go into window management. You can see that PEM editor is now a favorite because it's in bold. I'm not going to talk about my favorite PEM editor. That's how I got started in all this, working on Matt Slay, with Matt Slay on PEM editor. And of course, there's way too much to go in on that. The one thing I can say is because of PEM editor, I only use the property window once in a blue moon. And actually along those lines, I only use the class browser once in a blue moon because so many of its features I have replicated elsewhere. And I only use the project manager once in a blue moon. I always have the project manager open so my tools can find things in them. Continuing here, we have cycle through code windows. Well, that's F7. Let's do that. And this, what it does, it's just like Control F. Is it Control F1? This just goes through your code windows. It's a much more narrower search than including all the other windows that you have. Move and resize current window. This is a good one, particularly for this session, because this particular screen here, for instance, may have been way off here off the screen, and I'd like to get it into a common place. So if I go through move and resize this window, it takes it and puts it, well, it left this up here. I don't know where that came from. It moves it into a constant place. This is one for which there are options, and you can control what, if you want to, any of the four, top left width height. You can change any of those the way you want. And this lets me, particularly for this session, to bring windows back to where I want them to be, even if they're off the screen when I bring them up. Close all code windows, but this one, you guys can figure this out. I don't think you need help figuring this out. Let's go to another window than this one. I'm going to cycle through, and we're going to go down here, and I'm going to go to this statement right here and use the next one in line, which is move current line to top of the edit window. Well, that's pretty obvious. I'm on that line out of the bottom, and when I execute that, it goes to the top of the edit window. Foxborough, when it finds things, likes to put you in the middle of a window. Sometimes I find it more convenient to say, well, I found that, but I want that at the top of my window. The next one in line says, if you have a former class designer window, move the focus there. I frequently have a cluttered screen with lots of things on it, and I say, I want to go back to whatever former class I'm working on. It will take you there. And actually, it doesn't say this, but it will cycle through, if you have more than one, it will cycle through them as well. And the last in this list is home active window. So, and basically that says take whatever the window is and home it, just like that. And you can do this on most of the Foxborough windows as well. That's Control-Alt-T. Well, that's not good. Okay, it doesn't work on the project manager. Let's try this one. Didn't like that one either. It's funny. As always, things that work all the time until you show them in a demo. I use this primarily here on code windows, and also sometimes I move Super Browse off to the side. I want it open, and then when I want it back again, I'll do this, and it will home the window for me. So we finished these, and now we're going to go into code modifications, and we're going to talk about Beautify X. Now, Beautify X actually you could have an extensive, I could lead an extensive discussion about it. It is one of my primary tools. I view it as one of my big guns as well. I want to show you, it has a whole bunch of options, which I'm going to go here, shift click, and I'm going to go to the options. And I'm not sure if you can see this. There are pages of options. It does things with select statements, etc. And I'm going to show you what other tools it uses as well. It does all the things it normally does. You can make it do Beautify, native Beautify, but you don't have to. You can create the local list if you want to. You can add M dots. Now, I'm not an MDOT fan. I know there's been a lot of stuff in the community over the years about this way and that way. All I know is I had one time, at the worst possible time, this is going to happen, I lost a day and a half because I had two variables where I needed an MDOT. And I just said from then on, by George, I can never afford to do that again. And so when I write code, I don't use an MDOT. However, when I've used BeautifyX, it adds the MDOTs. And the last thing it does is check for returns between with and end with. So if you have with something or other, blah, 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 return, blah, 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 end with, that return stuff will leave a it will leave a dangling object, and that can cause your session to crash at some indeterminate time later. If you do this, it will find that for you. And actually, in one of the pieces of code that I've been using in examples here, I had actually done that. I had a return within that, and I thought I got rid of it because I couldn't leave it there. But that you don't need it very often, but it can be very helpful. So let's close this. Close. It takes a while. And I'm going to go cycle through the my windows here and see which one I want to. This will do. Okay, so here's some code with, among other things, this ugly select statement. And what I'm going to do, first of all, is I'm going to say, yeah, wrong. I'm going to apply BeautifyX, and it cleans up this routine, creates this local statement. There's some gibberish in here. And among other things, it took my ugly select statement and put it into what for me is the standard structure of my select statements. Always look the same way, and I have for many years now. So my standard is that when I work on a bunch of code, before I save, I will use BeautifyX. I always do that. So it is absolutely second nature to me, and I can't imagine not having code like that looks like it comes out in a standard format. I find that so much easier to read. So let's get rid of this. Go back. Control Z always works on all these things that modify code. There's another one that is closely related to that, and is beautify the current procedure. Well, if you're in a procedure file and you're working in a single procedure, this is what I use instead of normal BeautifyX. I just beautify this single procedure instead. And that way, I know I'm not in any way touching any of the other procedures that I'm not looking at the same time. The next one in line, create local variables. Well, you can guess what that does. Let's do that right here. Now, it is part of BeautifyX, but actually this tool predated BeautifyX, which is one of the reasons it's there. The second reason for me is it brings back the memory for me. I actually was known in my previous career, in my previous programming language, as a guy who created tools. And I actually gave a session, much like this session, except it was in a ballroom with a couple of hundred people in 1980. And the first item on my tool list then was create local variables. So, so I've been doing these types of things, of creating tools, for a long time. So let's do that, and it creates this local list right here for you. So let's do this. And I've moved to another PRG. I've added some things just for the session beyond what goes up here with these indication of where we are. So this thing says I can, well, here I'm going to do this. We're in a different universe. I'm going to start with some highlighted text. And I'm on wrap text with try catch. And it's a little hard to read this. And I'm not going to move my mouse, but we started with code modification and moved to the left and got highlighted text. And then we moved to the right, got wrap text. And it's unfortunate the way this works. However, note that the highlighted text has a hotkey itself, Alt-H. So you can get this same submenu just by pressing Alt-H. So I'm going to do that. And it gets exactly the same menu. So here's a whole bunch of related things that all have to do with highlighted text. So number one, I took that text that was highlighted and I wrapped it in try catch. Not very astounding. I can do it again. Wrap it with if, else, and if. Okay. Put that again. Let's see here. Duplicate lines. Well, this is for the case where you have a bunch of lines and you want to do almost the same thing in both places, and so you have to separate them, and it duplicates the text for you. Here's a tool that was from Tour's suggestion. He's a man of lots of things that have been added to Thor because of him. And this is one that says, if you're in an if and if block, you don't have to highlight it first. You can do this directly. You can say change the if and if to do case. And what it does is it takes the first part, that was the if clause, and this was the end if clause, and it added a case statement there in for you as well. Let's go back here. We can do this here, and the next one in line is, I don't know if you've noticed, I can tell up here, up in the upper right-hand corner, what the next one in line is. Comment selected text. Well, okay, that's very similar to what you get from the native right click, with the difference is that you can indicate the comment. This is an option that you have control over, what this comment looks like when you remove some text. And for some reason, it's not my initials today. Apparently, it thinks that Todd Landrum is doing this work. So we're going to blame him. Similarly, the next thing you can do here is, we'll go back here to uncomment selected text. And it removes that text. That is not very exciting. So let's see here. Oh, it forgot where we were. I have to move someplace else here. I'm going to go to another window. I thought I was going to go to this window. I'm sorry, I got a little bit lost here in my own menus, trying to provide them in order. Okay, going to go to this text here. Going to use go to definition. Wow, this is not good. Oh, this is pretty funny, actually. Okay, so I'm not going to use go to definition. Oh, well, when things go wrong, that's okay. I'm forgetting which one I am. Break highlighted text into a new line. Okay, we can find that. We're going to do that one right here. Sometimes you have some long text. This is a rather easy one. This can go on your list of I don't know if I really want to keep this. And if we go to our menu and say break highlighted text into a new line, it takes it into a new line and puts the rest of it on a third line as well. So it breaks into 3 parts. So I can do this again just because I like to show you all the lines here. Didn't get all of the text, did it? B for break, and it breaks in it Now the next one line is execute highlighted text. Now this is something that you can get from, if you do this here and we get some highlighted text and you right click, you can do execute selection, although that wouldn't execute very well. So you can do this execute highlighted text already. You can do this, and why would there, you ask me, why would there be a need to do something else? And actually there are two reasons. The first reason is, this is Tour's idea that sometimes you just want to do an entire statement, and why highlight this entire statement if I know that I'm going to execute it. So if I do this and execute, and that key was F4, it executes that that particular text for you. So in that case, it's nice. You don't have to highlight a multi-line statement. You can just execute it by clicking on it. But the second thing is, which may not have been obvious if you're actually looking at the code, if we look at this and we did a right click, let's do this. If you do a right click here and you say execute selection, it's going to blow up because this variable CR, which is referenced in here, does not exist. Well, what this tool, execute selected or highlighted text, does is it actually, what it executes includes all your include and define statements. So you can execute this as I showed you. You can go like that and it will execute the text and put the carriage returns in. So let's see if I can get this to navigate correctly. Execute selected test. There you go. And we'll find out. The next thing has to do with highlighting parameters, which is down here. So the next group of things, and I'm going to take you through what they're going to do here. The next one has to do with highlighting text, where you take text and highlight it. And the first one, and this has a different, this is a Control H menu. And so you can say Control H and then T to highlight a parameter. Unfortunately, this isn't the best example because I did not find at the last minute, as it turned out, a parameter that was very long. But if I did this one in here, for instance, for TTD, I'm inside the opening parenthesis for TTOD. And if I what do I say? So Control H, highlight parameter. It highlights that entire first parameter for whatever it is. It searches through and highlights it. So for instance, here, if I did it here, I could find that's the first parameter. And that's the second parameter. This really only works best if you have single values like that. You don't need this. But if you have a big set of nested parentheses and everything, it's very, very handy to extract that. The next one in line here is wrong menu. Control H is highlight a statement. Boom, you can highlight a select statement like that, or any other it has to do with, you're going to do that on multi-line statements, or you can do it on a single line statement. You're going to go back up here, and here we have some code that really should be beautified, but I haven't done that particularly so you can see that it's ugly. And so I can say Control H, highlight the control structure. Let's get that not scrolled off the top. Control H, highlight control section C. It finds that whole do case control structure. And then if I repeat it, Control H C, it goes one layer farther out, for that's the for in for loop. And then if you do one more, it will get, have to press the right key. it will get the if and if. And it will also find other structures like try, and procedure, and define class, and end define. So you can keep going outward from the inside out. The next one is easy. I'm not going to bother to show it to you. Control H. P, you can highlight the current procedure. And the last two in this list have to do with, and I wish I had better examples of this, have to do with finding where parentheses match each other. And the first one, although not the first in order, is the one for highlight the next left parenthesis. And it really means highlight it and its pair. So that's L. And it found that entire select statement. And then if I do it again, it will find the next left parenthesis from there. And it keeps doing that, finding left parenthesis. Similarly, and I'm going to go to a different line, I'm going to go down here. If you start inside the parenthesis, you can do this. And next, it goes to the outer parenthesis. And again, and again. And it keeps finding, going from the inside out. So let's see where we are right here. We've done that. Next, we're going to go to, I want to do execute selected text, which may not do anything. That doesn't matter. And then go to my next one in line, which is extract to. Hello. Extract to. And it says extract to method. Well, this you have to have some highlighted text, and you're going to extract it to a method within a VCX or an SCX. So let's see what this does. It brings up I made it so it could bring up a form so I could demonstrate this. And we can highlight some text. You wouldn't do it with this bunch of text, of course. And then we said, it didn't remember where we were very well. It says extract this to a method. Gosh. Well, I'm going to ignore that. And I don't know what's going wrong there, but at least it's consistent. And it says, what's the name? I'll just call it new name. And it takes this code, and if it's going to do what it's supposed to, it creates a method, a procedure called new name. Put the code in that method. And then if I close this window and I go back to where it came from, it puts in a reference to that code here. This is just a refactoring tool, right? Take something, put it in its own method, and this takes those steps and simplifies it for you. So you actually don't have to create the new method and everything else. You can extract a variable. Here, let me take this little variable, XYZ. And I'm going to highlight this. These extract to require you have highlighted something. Extract to variable, and it's going to say, what's the name? Well, it's consistent. What's the name of the variable you're going to create? It's called XYZ. And do you want to replace all occurrences and put it in the locals list? Yes, I do. And so what it did here is it created, if I do this, if I have something that's repeated multiple times in a block of code, I will create a variable for that. And it put that, the reference to that variable for there and all other references, which is what I chose. Similarly, where'd we go here? Oh, that's okay. Similarly, if I have here, trying to find it. If you have this assignment or reference, you can highlight this and you can say it's Control-Alt-E was the the keystroke, and it extract to a constant, and it comes. Oh, well, it's always that same line of code. I'm not going to try to debug it here. What variable am I going to call it? It says on the top, this says to variable, and this says to constant. That's what it's really doing. It's creating a constant. I'm going to call it newcon. And I'm just going to replace it. I'm going to put it in this procedure. I could store it into any of the include files that that it are implied by the include, and it will put it, I believe, at the very end of the file. But I'm going to put it in this procedure so you can see it. And there's the definition, and here's the reference to it here. So I'm going to close this for now. Let's go back here. And I'm going to go back to a procedure that what we referenced, we saw before. And if you looked at this now, if those lines were not there, you'd have a case where you would have to close all of the control structures that are there. And this is one of Matt Slay's thing. I usually don't write. I know that you can say if end, and you'll get if and else and end. And if. I don't do that. I'd be better off if I did. But certainly sometimes you're going to wrap code. And what you can do here is you can say, see if it's going to go to the right place. Close control structure is F5. So I wasn't on the control structure anymore. There we go. I said that was F5, and that will put an end case, and then it'll do an end for, and then it will do an end if. And if it was in a procedure, if the next line was a procedure, it would put in an end proc as well. So where are we next? Enhanced cut. Well, enhanced cut is a result of, this is one of those things where, why is this here? It's here because it's the source, really. This is why Thor ended up existing. It's the headwaters for Thor. Matt called me and said, what happens if you press Control X and nothing is highlighted? And I said, nothing. He says, I'm in an editor where it can delete the current line. Can we do that? I said, well, yeah, but why? He says, but then we can do other stuff. And the other stuff that we could do eventually got to be so much that we had to create a vehicle in which we could deliver all the tools and assign hotkeys to them. And that's what Thor is. So this little tool, which I use once in a blue moon, but it does, that's the reason, like I said, the headwaters for where Thor came from. So the next one is remove with and end with. Let's see if I can find this code in here. Here we go. Now, first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to, well, I shouldn't have done that because it keeps getting the same error every time. I made this a little bit more readable so you can see that I have a with and end with in the middle of this here. And this particular thing, the next one in line says if I remove with end with, it takes that particular line, that with and end with, and removed it so that it's not there anymore. You may remember that earlier I talked about if you had a return between a with and end with, this is the tool that you would use to get rid of the with and end with. You simply click inside the with and end with statement, use the tool, and the with and end with disappear. Similarly, if we take this, I'm going to have to highlight this particular statement and go to the next one in line. That says you can add a with and end with. And here you have to enter the name of the parent object, and I'm sure you can't read that, but that is the name of that command button, command split even, and it takes it and it takes that particular code and splits it out into a new with and with block. So the next thing we're going to do has to do with, I'm going to show you the tool first of all. Insert full name of object under the mouse. Well, first of all, you have to understand if it's whatever is under the mouse, you can't use it by clicking on the menu because it depends on where your mouse is. This is one where you want to use a hotkey. In this case, the hotkey is Alt-O, as you can see. So I'm going to close this. And here I've got some form and some container deep in the form, and I want to add a reference to this particular command, right? This command button here. And what I can do is I make sure I'm there, and if I press, I want to have the mouse over that command button, and it will insert the full reference to that command button. And it will start from this form if it thinks it makes more sense to start from the form. Otherwise, it will follow a relative path. We did that one. Well, so we're going to get done with that. Now we're going to go into parent classes and objects. And this is one which I've been told Alt-P is one of the neat things in here, edit parent and containing classes. So I'll come back to that. I want to talk about what it means. First of all, let's get rid of this. Let's click here. Well, that's kind of odd. This particular object here, if I wanted to delete it, yeah, not surprised, I can't because it's a member of a parent class. And the question is, how do you get to the parent class? What do you know what the parent class is? Well, there's a navigation tool called, well, did it again. My navigation tool is not working as well as I'd like right now. I can go to edit and parent and containing classes. You know, there we go. No, the thing is that I had to actually select, I'm interested in this object here. So I'm going to bring up that menu again, Alt-P, and here is the parent classes. So apparently that thing is contained in a page frame, and I should move this up. I don't know if this helps very much. The font's kind of small. It's in a page frame, and it's a container on a page frame, and it's a button in a container. So I'm going to guess that it's in this container right here, and I'm going to modify selected class. However, this is one, and we don't like to do this. You have to read directions. It first says, first of all, you have to save or close the current form. You can't go modify a parent class if this form is still open. So I'm going to close this form. And no, I don't want to make changes. No, stop bothering me. And then finally, we can go here and we can open that this object, this container, and we can see these objects. And if I wanted to, then I could delete it if I wanted to. Then the question is, how do you go back? Well, I told you it's a navigation tool. If you make your changes here and in this class, then you can go to either of the other classes that were relevant. You can go between them. You have to close them each time, of course. And when done, you can return to the original. So if I close this, I could go back to the original form. The next thing in line here is redefine parent class, which is, that's a good idea. And it was really neat trying to solve this problem. However, it's limited because you can only redefine a parent class of objects which do not have child objects. So you can't do it on a form, you can't do it on a page frame or a container or a grid, only simple objects. And it will prompt you, okay, it'll say, this is the object that you're selected, and you can redefine that object. Compare with parent class is almost like what you can get. Well, you can get this in both PEM editor and the property window, and it shows you all your non-default values. With one difference here is it shows you here's what the value is now, and here's what the value would be if you reference the default case. And in fact, it tells you which ones are default. It has this button and it checks them off, so you can reset the selected items to default if you wanted to. I certainly do that sometimes if I'm copying properties from an object and I say, you know, I really should have put them in the parent class. That's where they should have belonged, which is what I'm going to get to next. The next one in line is, well, I'll add property or method. There are 99 ways to add properties and methods. And so we're going to skip this one. We're going to say copy for comparing and pasting. Well, something flashes up on the top as it's copying all non-default properties and methods for your selected object. If you do this, if I do it for a grid, it takes some time because I have a very dense grid class. And so then you can say, go to the next one in line, paste properties. Well, to paste, I have to someplace to paste. Let's paste to this guy right here. And if I say paste, Alt V, it doesn't paste directly. It says, which of them do you want to paste? So it tells you that basically the differences between the copied object and in this object, and it lets you choose which properties you want to copy. So for the case I mentioned just a minute ago, if you're going to take something, suppose you have a couple of methods in a child class. I mean, in a child class that you want to put into the parent class, you could copy them first, close all the way. It's saved somewhere. I'm not sure what screen property it's saved in. You can then go to the parent class and you can paste the properties in. They don't have to be in the same object to do the copying. And you got checkboxes to determine which ones you want to paste. And the last one in the list here is compare with copied object. And that's actually not very exciting because really it's the same as paste. It's just that it doesn't give you the option to paste. So let's see here where we are in our list. I'm going to close this. Maybe I can cancel this and find out where we are in our list. Oh, we're getting close to the end, and time isn't real bad. Modify size and position for selected objects. This is one from Todd Landrum, and it's going to bring up. I want to do that. I closed that other form. This thing, I want to show this instead. This is something where instead of using dragging things with a mouse or modifying your size and position properties of objects in PEM editor or the property window, you can do them a different way. So for instance, I can, and it really works best if it's really designed for multiple objects. So I'm going to select all of these, move this little guy over here. And for instance, I could say, change the top by 1 and they're going to move down. Okay. I can put them back again. I can say, here's a step size of 30 and I can add 30 so that they move down 30 at a time. So, and I'm sure you, people in the room cannot see all of these little icons, but there are nice little tool tips to tell you how you can use them. And we can do this as long as you haven't put the focus someplace else. You can use this to revert your changes. Now, the interesting thing about this has to do with vertical spacing and horizontal spacing. And so these guys have identical space between the objects right now. And you can change the spacing by 1, so it's a little bit bigger, or we can make it really big by adding 15 to it or subtracting 15 from it. That's the first thing you can do. Second thing which is really more interesting, is you can, suppose I took this one called toy, and I wanted to add another one into the list and also keep the spacing. So I can duplicate this. I'm going to put it up here. I want it to go between class and product. Then the question is, how do you make these things line up nicely? This is what the tool is for. Highlight all of them. Make the, first of all, I'm going to say, make them move to have the same left. They now all have the same left, and change the vertical spacing, and poof, they have moved. So that the space, that's too much space. Let's decrease the space between them. Similarly, and it doesn't work very well in this particular form, you can say, well, I'm going to have horizontal spacing. Suppose you had these and you were said, oh, I really need them horizontal rather than vertical. Well, you can change them in actually 2 steps. One is you can say that made them into horizontal, spaced out evenly. And the next thing is I can say I can move them, make their top all the same, and they're assigned that way. What you might want to do is use, go to PEM editor and use auto size on them, and then once again change the horizontal spaces between them. So this is a cute little tool to work with size and position of objects. I might want to leave that. Next in line, hello. Name categorization for the current window. Well, here we got a window, and there's all sorts of code window. There's all sorts of stuff going on in it. Lord only knows what's going on. This is when I come across either some of my old code or some of Steve's more recent code, where it's a long block, and you take name categorization, and I don't really like the name, but basically it says everything. In this case, in the entire code window, or it could be just what you highlighted. These are all the things that are assigned, but are not localized. So you can find the right. And actually, if you let's see here, let's try ln find count. If we go to if we double click here, it finds that particular line for you. So I use this. If I find out that I have a number of things that are assigned, I will use this tool to navigate to them, and I can see all the references to them, even if they're not assigned. You can see LC file to find is referenced here. It's not assigned here. So these are all references to things that have global assignments. And you have global references. Here's one global reference, and another global reference. And there are a bunch of categories here as well. And you can get a list of all the categories by looking here. You can say, which nodes do you always want to expand? And you can choose one single node to always open up at startup. So this is a neat little tool for evaluation. It's like a mini Go Fish just for the current code window that you're looking at by name. It's Go Fish that looks up things by name. The next one here is, it's nice that we're in this the miscellaneous group because they're really unrelated. The next one is compare text in 2 windows, Control F9. So I've got compare 1 and compare 2. They look almost the same. How are they different? I'm going to use the hotkey Control F9. And it says the text has been captured. And then I'm going to do it the other one, Control F9. And it's going to call Beyond Compare to show me where the differences are. By default, it calls Beyond Compare, but this is a plugin, and you may want to modify the plugin. It may not work for you. It may be referring to a file location where Beyond Compare doesn't exist. So you may want to modify that to fit your needs. Object Explorer. Now, Object Explorer, I know this is something that Tamar talked about. Her emphasis is different than mine for Alt F7. This is the last tool that I worked on with Matt. And the idea is to put your mouse over, and my use is to put your mouse over an object, and you can explore that object. And the thing about this, its real intent, our real intent, was to use that in your production application. I use this. It's amazing how frequently it is of value to me in my production to have this hotkey, which only works for me, and allows me to go in and I can look at the inside of a form. I can look at the inside of a container or whatever. I can look at arrays. You'll see how I can do all this. So one example of this is a label right here. And if I press Alt F7, which was the key, well, I didn't do that right. Toolbar actually shows up as something, and I'm not going to go into the toolbar. But if we go here, and it brought up this label. It's a class, and here's the caption for the label. And I have all the properties for the label. And now I can navigate, and I can go, for instance, to screen. And it turns out screen never occurred to me, but it makes so much sense. It's of a class. It's a form. So when I added this to this form, I just added this to a form, and it works. Now, you can double click on any one of these things, and you can edit the value. You can even look at and edit arrays. If I double click here, oh, that's not a very interesting one. Let's go back here. This one here, and you'll notice that it's a 3x4, and it listed it very nicely with spaces between them, and you can modify any of these values. And curiously, these are the bookmarks from Go to Definition that were left over. So this is an interesting one in that it works both in the IDE, but it has more of a value when used, for me at least, when used as part of all my production apps. This is a hotkey that I can use. Go to include file. Let's go here. Let's here. Control Alt N here. Go to include file will prompt for all the include files that are part of this particular. You can see NIS, and it includes 3 other include files. So you can go and edit that file. That is a way to get to the open up an include file. Here's an interesting one because what you can't tell by looking at this is that this here is actually a page frame where the tabs are hidden. And I always had problem with how do you work with, first of all, how do you recognize it? That's one question. But beyond that, how do you work with it once you've recognized it because you can't see it? So this particular tool, toggle visibility of pages in the page frame, which actually is the same as I put in up in my toolbar, because I use the one in the toolbar, and I go here and it shows me page 1 and page 2. And then if I toggle frames again, I can now see what's on page 2. The thing that you need to know about, it doesn't matter where you leave this when you're done editing, because it always goes to page 1. You can't change that. However, you have to remember to remove the tabs when you save it. Otherwise, they'll appear in your application. MRUs. It's kind of funny that this shows up at the very end. I think MRUs are one of those things that people have gotten away from because they have other ways of getting to forms and classes and whatever that they've modified. And I think that's unfortunate. Alt-R, it turns out that all the tools that I've shown you all write to the MRU list. So if any of the things that I've done, if I went to the command window and I said modify command, you would see the files that I had opened. But Alt-R gives you a pop-up list of all the different MRUs you might be interested in using, and includes a new one called class libraries. This, for instance, these are all the classes. If I'm looking at a class that I worked on yesterday, I'm going to go here and look in here, and I'm going to say, oh, there's the one I worked on. That for me is the easiest way to find, not the thing I worked 5 minutes ago, but it could be. If it's a PRG I was just working on, it would be right here near the top. So that is this particular one. I would highly recommend that you try this. It's amazing. Once you get back into using MRUs, that how valuable you will actually find them to be. So let's see, we're getting close to the end here, which we only got a couple items left. Add the current file to the active project. This is one of the reasons I say I don't use the project manager very much, because this will prompt me to say, do you want to add this to the active project? Or if it's already in the active project, it'll say, do you want to remove it? It will take care of that. So that's one of the things that I've recently added, and I use that quite a lot. The last two things are from a Mr. Schumer, I believe, Hack CX4. And the difference with this one is when you choose it, it asks you which file it uses. Here, this is the MRU list for forms. This is the MRU list for classes. And it prompts you for the file. So if you're working on this file, this first item, I realized, does not make any sense. But we can close that and get rid of it. And the last one, and I'm just done now, right, is Rick's Hack IntelliSense to Modify Fox Code tool, which is a great tool. And I use it regularly. Here's my work on maintenance table items. So this is the end of my session. Well, let's see here. Hello. There we go. Thank you very much for coming to my session. It's been a pleasure showing off the things that I have fun with every day. I welcome your comments, both in the suggestion, in the review of the session, as well as using the GitHub issues. Thank you very much. And I am